Hello everyone and welcome back to the Great Book of Grudges. My name is Nathan and today we're going to talk about some old world rumors. This might be the last time that we're going to talk about some rumors for a while, as on Sunday there's going to be some news dropping. We don't know exactly what it is, but it's likely going to be the trailer, and that's going to take some time to analyze and so on, so yeah. However, there have been some rumors floating around about the potential start box, and there's actually quite a lot of rumors all over the place. The funny thing is, it becomes this whole case of maybe one of them is true, because there's just so many out there. It's kind of bizarre, and we're not going to see the start box anytime soon. However, this could be kind of fun to talk about, so yeah. Also, before we jump right in, I'm not sure when this video is going live. It's probably going live on the Friday, as by this point I'll be at UK. I'll actually be in the United Kingdom going to Warhammer Fest, and let's hope EasyJet don't lose my stuff on the flight there. Yeah, but with all that said, let's talk about the potential start box rumors. So one thing that people have been talking about online, some people claiming that they've got a great source about it, keep in mind that most of these are kind of the same, is a Empire only start box, which would kind of make sense considering that the Empire right now in this point of the timeline is in the middle of a really large civil war. We've got four factions: the Reichlanders under Sigmar, obviously the Ulrichians under Midland, and well actually Nordland, the Talabeks and those who worship Tal, and finally Marienburg, because at this point in the story Marienburg decides, hey, we want to become emperor too. It's a weird thing. Now, this is a pretty interesting box. None of these are probably true, or maybe one of them is, but yeah, I kind of like the idea of this because we've already seen something very similar with Warhammer 30k, where it was literally just Space Marines, and you could paint them with any legion that you wanted. Then afterwards, they started releasing kind of like specific stuff. The only problem is the churches for the Empire at this point are so different because each of them would have their own specific units and so on. Like the Midlanders, the Ulrichians, they'd have White Wolves and Wolf Riders. We know that from the lore. Whereas the Reichlanders and the Sigmarites would be a bit more traditional to the Empire that we knew from basically 8th edition. So it would be a kind of boring box if it was just like the baseline entry, and not everyone is really interested in playing the Empire. Yes, they do have a lot of points in lore for this specific period, but I don't think that they're going to introduce anything too cool. Unless, of course, Magnus the Pious was there, but we know for a fact that Magnus the Pious is a little bit later on. If it was just Empire, if it had Magnus, then yeah, I would happily pay for a box like that, because Magnus the Pious is super, super cool, but unfortunately, I don't see this happening. Standalone boxes are great when coming alongside your army book, but not at the launch of an edition. Like, for example, 10th edition, this is for Warhammer 40k, you've got the Tyranids and the Ultramarines, which really should have been Tyranids and Blood Angels, but let's open that kettle of fish somewhere else. This made perfect sense for 30k, however, because Warhammer 30k is very centralized on Space Marines fighting Space Marines. Another box I've been hearing some chatter about is the potential of Empire versus Greenskins, you know, orcs and stuff, and yeah, I mean, this could kind of work. It does sound quite interesting because the Empire is going to be a mainstay faction. It's generally likely going to be one of the most played anyway, even though I said not everyone wants to play Empire before. But, you know, a lot of people go for the generic faction because it's easier to just get into. Orcs are cool, right? The models did age quite well, I'll be very honest with you. I know there's people who are going to say they didn't, but really the Orc boys aged quite well. Black Orcs aged very well. Savage Orcs, yeah, pretty cool. At the end of the day, like, the Orc line just needs a little bit of updating, but the grand majority, I'd say, is fine, at least for a launch. Now, this one does have some potential, considering that we do have some lore that falls around more or less this period. The War of Gorbad Ironclaw, who uses a lot of cavalry, is actually known as an intelligent orc, basically decimates Solent, and I guess this could work quite well to see the end of Solent. I mean, it'll bring a lot of PTSD to people, but it could be a good theme. You could get a box like this, a bunch of orc boys, a bunch of orc cavalry, versus some Imperials, maybe with a little bit of Gods of Lore, so introducing other churches which have been known in the lore, but have disappeared until recent times, where they've started being mentioned again. And yeah, it would be kind of fun theming, I'd say. Orcs and Goblins would be a great kit. I mean, that was a kit way back in the day too. I mean, remember those monopose dudes? I still have a lot of them, actually. They might want to bring back a kit like that, obviously with the updated miniatures, because those minis have updated over the years, well, most of the Empire stuff, and just kind of go like, hey, remember this box? Well, here's version 2.0, bigger, larger, and probably more expensive, let's be honest. I don't know, I kind of like the idea of this. Faction versus faction is just a lot more fun. Now, the strongest rumors that I've been hearing around is that of the Batonians versus the Tomb Kings. And I know that has pretty much nothing to do with what's happening with the Empire Civil War. However, it does kind of sound doable. You see, the first renders that we've seen of Warhammer the Old World are actually of Batonian and Tomb King things, which is pretty impressive considering that I'd say the Tomb King line is fine. Yes, the Skeletal Warriors and the Archers kind of outdated, but the other stuff, you know, like the Chariots look good, the Constructs look amazing, they are very, very well aged. You know, the Batonians, they look good for their age. Like, we've just seen them being repainted on new base sizes, and I must say they look very good for their age. Barring, obviously, like Grail Knights, Questing Knights, those ones that needed to be updated from metal to hopefully plastic. Well, we know they're plastic kits, but I'm hoping the whole range becomes plastic. And those two races suffered in 8th edition. You see, the Batonians never had a 8th edition army book. They actually had their 6th edition army book, which made them very weak when compared to the others. Book creep does actually set in here. The Tomb Kings did have an 8th edition army book, but were screwed over by the rules, which just made them kind of bad to play. They were considered one of the worst, one of the best looking armies, but one of the worst to play. You either had to get very lucky or hope that your enemy, or better yet said, your opponent, had very bad rolls, which, yeah, is not fun. I have got a large Tomb King army, and I think I played them like 4 times, and that's it. Obviously, the Beastmen suck too, but who really cares about the Beastmen? I'm not hoping they'll get decent rules, but I think Bretonia and Tomb Kings will sell a lot more, and the fact is that this would be a great way to start off a new edition going, these were the 2 underperforming armies in 8th, how about we bring them up a tad, bring them more on par with everyone, also release it with shiny new kits, right? The fact is, we know a lot of old kits are returning, but they were very keen to show off new Bretonia and Tomb King stuff, which to me kind of says, yeah, they want to hint at this a lot more. They want to say, hey, guess what's coming? And yeah, I mean, that kind of makes a lot of sense. I would love to see a bunch of new miniatures come out for them, bring them more in line with everyone else visually too, or at least as much as possible, and then some, because let's be honest, Warhammer Fantasy miniatures did not age too well, barring a few models. But in my personal hope, this is probably going to be the one. I could be wrong. They could decide to do something completely different. You never know. You never know. Okay, so one rumor that's been floating around every now and then, and I guess kind of makes sense because of Total War Warhammer 3's promotion, was Kislev versus Chaos. Kind of makes sense. I mean, it's something that we're eventually going to see. If this doesn't become a box set now, it's going to be a box set in the future, because Asavar Kul is the big bad, and obviously Kislev is a main focus during this point in the story, because the Great War against Chaos is about to start, Kislev basically gets destroyed, Prague gets turned into yeah. I mean, I believe this is the first of many times that Prague just gets absolutely destroyed and then rebuilt and then destroyed again. Yeah, fun times. But it would kind of make sense, in a way, to promote a new thing. The only thing is, we know Kislev is in production. We know Kislev is an army for this. I just don't see Kislev becoming a main faction at the very launch. I would see Kislev and Cafe, because keep in mind that Cafe was also confirmed. I see them coming down later down the line, as I imagine that they would want to do all the re-releases of all the older products, because they did confirm that older kits were coming back. Some new miniatures for the older factions that desperately needed a little bit of a push, Wood Elves being one of them, because the Glade Guard and stuff did start to show their age. And then possibly 6 months to a year from then, introduce new factions. I'm not too sure how it's working out too well right now for 30k, as I'm not really following 30k too much. I'll be honest with you right now, my attention is going to rebasing my 20s to 25s for Old World's eventual release. But I imagine that newer factions will take a little bit longer to get out there, which is a shame, because I actually really am curious to see the rules for Cafe and Kislev too. If they play like the tabletop, they're going to be quite interesting, especially Kislev is going to be quite strong considering a lot of hybrid units. But I really do think it's going to have to take a while. I don't know. I've not heard too much about these rumors, in all honesty, about the Kislev versus Chaos box. It would be incredibly thematic, but I'm still saying if this does happen, it will be further down the line. And the last rumor, which kind of low-key wanted for one of them, is that apparently there's a rumor going around. I don't know how valid this one is, but the Battle for Blackfire Pass and the Island of Blood boxes will just get reissued. So the first box is Night Goblins versus Dwarfs. The only problem is that The Night Goblins have been updated and they look a little bit better. They're still keeping to the true form, but just a little bit larger, a little bit more detail. The Dwarfs kind of need to be updated. The Elves look fine, in all honesty, for the Island of Blood box, though. And the Skaven are actually just pretty much in line. Fun fact, we have updated weapon teams and rat ogres in this box, which just don't get sold individually. Instead, people just buy the older version because Games Workshop, I don't know, broke the mold or lost the mold, or apparently just thought, hey, we're not going to sell this because let's give them the older rat ogres. I mean, I kind of like the idea of this. I really do like the idea of this. Mostly because I'm a Skaven player, but I don't know. I feel like a box with new miniatures would kind of be cooler than reissuing old stuff. And yeah, I mean, we're going to have to wait. I'm just saying the Tomb King stuff and the Batonian stuff sounds the most interesting because we know that the weapons there were for the Tomb King Lord, and that wasn't really a thing back in the day. You just basically bought the generic metal one. You couldn't really kit bash it unless you knew how to cut metal and stuff. But I don't know. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Let's start a bit of a discussion. I won't be able to get to too many comments, I think, mostly because I'm right now, hopefully, in England, you know, knock on wood. But I'll be reading your comments and your thoughts as soon as I have a moment to breathe. But yeah, have a lovely weekend, guys. I've got a lot of content coming out, and hopefully there'll also be a video on the Old World reveals as soon as they happen.